Welcome, Larry. So great to have you. Thanks for joining us in one of our early editions of Masters of mmhmm. Welcome.
Hey, it's good to see you, Andrew. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here in the woods with you today.
But I think before we jump into some stuff, I'd love to know a little bit more about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What should we know about Larry Gioia?
For me, I'm a technologist at heart, Andrew, and part of my role in my world of work, but also my daily job, is to use technology and frankly experiment a lot to bring technology to the masses, so to speak. And in light of that, Andrew, I'm a huge fan of digital and using technologies like this to frankly try new things and show up differently in the digital world. So this is, I think, very apropos for why we're having this conversation today.
Awesome, awesome. So, Larry, one of the first things I want to pull up is this great tweet you had recently about how you showed up on video calls, and you've been really active in talking about how you approach video calls differently. Um, just using this as a sort of stepping off point, can you go more into this sort of new direction you've had with being a leader in showing up differently in all of your distributed work calls?
Yeah, no, so I think it's this whole thing, I talk about a grand experiment, right? And I think so I started using your technology from the very beginning, and it's been awesome to use and learn along with you and frankly the broader community. But this specific tweet, it came from a place of, we all look like that over there on video, right? In our own little respective boxes and showing up like a Brady Bunch, right? And I talk about kind of getting out of the box. You all talk about getting out of the office. I talk about getting out of that box, both literally and figuratively. And by doing that, as you know better than anybody, but so many are learning about this technology, I thought it was only fitting that we find different ways to get out of the box, think outside of the box, and get outside of the box on video. And so this was just more of a whimsical way to start getting people thinking differently, and frankly, kind of getting people to start asking questions.
And we loved this meme from you too, of like the reaction that you get when you surprise and sort of delight people when you show up in different ways on your calls.
Yeah, I mean, so you nailed it, right? Whether I'm talking to clients or I'm showing up on just team meetings internal within the firm that I'm in, surprise and delight. That's been something that's I've been trying to carry through now that we're all working virtually. Is surprise and delight. It could be something as simple as a screen share, or something as simple as showing up inside of a spreadsheet. These kinds of things, surprise and delight. This is the reaction that I often get, and you know where this goes from there. How are you doing that? What exactly is going on there? Which becomes a conversation piece. And so much of what I've learned to continue to carry through in my work and in learning this technology is, how do we get the conversation going beyond what we're actually there to talk about?
Cool. Well, let's actually back up for a second, because take me back to like January 2020, right before the pandemic hit. Um, how did you navigate the first 6 months? And like, obviously now you're sort of evangelizing how to stand out, how to differentiate, how to sort of surprise and delight. But was that obvious to you already? Like, give us a little bit about how you found mmhmm and why it felt right to you when it hit.
Yeah, so kind of sped through kind of my background. Not that it's that interesting, but so I've been traveling as the not a salesman by any means, but serving clients around the world for 15 years, Andrew. So I've been traveling, the road warrior, right? 4 days a week on the road, coming back home to family. That's the last 15 years, and it wasn't like an abrupt stop. So I guess I'll back into your question by way of, I've been off the road for 3 years. My family here at home, I've been working from home for now 3 years, right? And I say that is that it wasn't like an abrupt, I have to find new technology. As a technologist, I've always been experimenting, and I would say what's kind of catalyzed it, so to speak, kind of my interest in not just but other green screen technology and things like that, because I spend more time now in the office you see above me, right? With that in mind, this idea of continued experimentation, I started using your technology as a part of the beta program. I kind of signed up, like I think most people who had the opportunity to do so, and got the invite, and I leaned all the way into it, right? First on Mac, and then now as a Windows user, spending my days between meetings just playing with it, truly just playing with it, tinkering with it, giving feedback, which you're also open to, and really kind of just being creative or trying to be creative and find new ways to use it to surprise and delight. So with that in mind, it quickly became, is now truly, I talk about my daily driver. I use mmhmm. It's open on every single call that I'm on. I know many of in our community are using it for presentations and using it on a one-off basis. I use it every single day for every single call I'm on, because it gives me that capability to actually just pop something up. I don't have to say, hold on, wait a second, pull up a green screen. I'm always using it, right? And so this example here, I think maybe what you were getting at is, this is my real office. And I started experimenting, Andrew, because I have a green screen. For those who, as you get to know, your virtual background can actually be your real background. So I literally kind of faked the virtual background with my real office. That gives me the ultimate flexibility to do whatever I really want. And so in this example, I shrunk myself down to the size of something on my shelf. And I think we made some joke about being Larry on a shelf at one point. I think it was around Christmas time earlier this year, which had a lot of my colleagues laughing and having fun in the process. So yeah, there's a couple examples in there, a couple hopefully context, Andrew, for kind of how I've kind of learned about continue to learn about and frankly continue to learn from the community that's all learning this together.
Yeah, we've got this clip here of you kind of showing your process. I'm curious how you found that, like, how has some of this new technology opened up like your own sense of creativity, your own path towards kind of expressing yourself and in your work?
Yeah, so I mean, so this video here happens to be one that was actually over the holiday break. One of the things that the part of this experimentation, Andrew, is I said, how can I start not just, okay, it's cool, I can get out of the box. I can start showing up differently on video. But something that I've been thinking a lot about, and now that we're all living in the world of video, whether that's mainstream video or obviously internet video, this idea of a lower thirds. This tutorial that I put together, I was showing up on video by way of having this kind of chyron, lower thirds beneath me. And I got a lot of really interesting reactions. And I don't mean like, that's cute, that's funny, but that's really professional. How are you doing that? You're really looking different aside from just being who I am. But it changed the narrative, Andrew. And that idea of this lower thirds construct, I made this tutorial because everyone was asking about it. How are you doing that? And so I think, like most creatives, of which I don't really think of myself as a creative, can you tell us how you did that? And so I spent the time, in one take, believe it or not, I made this 30-minute tutorial and walked myself through it. It was great to document that, right? Because now it's an asset that can be used for the broader community. But frankly, I think it's hopefully serving as a source of at least some additional ideas for your product team and for others for how this technology can be used outside of its really intended use. So if that helps you, Andrew, these kinds of things, by the way, I've got a couple more I plan to share with the team. But this one, I think, has got a lot of traction, a lot of interest, because, I think of community by way the same way that you do, is that the technology only serves as one mechanism to put yourself out there. What happens out with your user group at the end of the day is really, opportunities for you all to involve the product, and frankly, for us as end users to find new ways to show up that we can all be better on video together.
Awesome. I want to pull up this one because I think one of the things that's really interesting that we hear from people who learn about for the first time is the idea that you're no longer separated from your content, that like you and your content are like in like one cohesive whole. I'm wondering if you could speak to, like, I don't know, have you seen an impact do you feel like you're having more impact now, or do you, is by way of being a kind of leader in video, have you seen I don't want to say competitive advantage, but are there kind of benefits that you're seeing that maybe are beyond just the like, hey, I want to show up better for my colleagues, but I'm actually doing my job better?
Yeah, no, so it's a great question. And because this is all so new, there's no real benchmark. If I were to kind of put it in the terms of like, how do you measure, are you making an impact, right? I guess if I were just to use one kind of key performance indicator, so to speak, of the amount of inquiry I get after showing up on a call like this above. How are you doing that? What was that technology? How are you doing that? Those kinds of inquiries alone, just in my mind, piquing curiosity. I think if we as presenters, or we as thought leaders, or whatever we want to call ourselves, if we can pique curiosity, that instigation becomes a mechanism for us to open others' aperture to, hey, how are we doing this? Or frankly, as an innovator, how do we get other people to change, right? So I think that's one metric, Andrew, if I think about kind of just the inquiry alone. The impact that I think it's had, and as I've shared with you from the very beginning, the perspective here I'm sharing with you is that of my own and not of my firm. But for what it's worth, I would say, from my experience in working with mmhmm as an individual end user, there's absolutely applications all over the place for this in the enterprise, right? By way of business power users using this and showing up differently for their clients at scale, and not just a one-off kind of business to consumer play. So I think the other indicator that I see in thinking about my firm with which I work and other companies, it truly is a differentiator. It truly is, and I'll talk about maybe product pitches or just doing proposals we were otherwise doing in person and showing up in a room, Andrew. When we can show up differently like this and be different on video from their competition, or frankly from, and making a sales presentation, these kinds of things are sticky. They stay with people. It may have been a great technology, a great product that you're pitching, but they're going to remember the fact that someone was flying around the room or someone put something over their shoulder like this. Those kinds of like micro nudges or micro moments, Andrew, I think are truly differentiating. And I'm going to continue exploring those with you all and with my colleagues, because I think they really are differentiating in whatever business that you're in. I hope that helps.
Definitely. Larry, what kind of response do you have from people who just say video will never replace in-person experiences, the kind of relationships that you can build in person? But now that you've had 3 years, of working in a distributed way, and of course being, primarily at home as a result of the pandemic, what are your thoughts about going forward when we do have more of the opportunity to meet in person? How does video factor into, your outlook on that?
Yeah, so I would be remiss if I ever suggested that video is going to replace human connection, right? And I think anyway, hopefully folks will agree with that. But I think the kind of grand experiment that we're all living through right now, and I think frankly is here to stay for distributed work, is that since maybe we're not coming back to the office as much as we used to, or frankly we're not all getting together as much as we used to, we all have, as humans, obviously as social creatures, have to find new ways to be social, to be connected in different ways and truly adapt. I talk about that often in some of my other thought leadership and work outside of my day job. Now with that, I think comes leaning into technology like this, or finding new ways to show up and be social and meet someone where they are, right? And so here we're obviously sitting in a virtual background, but what was the kind of yesteryears, Andrew, of walking down the hallway and obviously bumping into somebody and kind of having this kind of happenstance collision where, where human connection happens or ideas happen in a hallway, I think we can actually not emulate that, but actually, I would say, instigate that through video by way of these kind of otherwise silly things, right? This happens to be an example. Let's use this example. I've never met the client for whom I was actually pitching the service that we were actually delivering on this. And you're like, what exactly? It happens to be Wizard of Oz, okay? We have actually, to tell the real story, I've never met that client before, but we worked together in a capacity whereby they didn't really know me, I didn't really know them, but we were actually pitching them on using some of our technology for a delivery of a live performance for the purposes of keeping people safe. Okay, interesting. But I showed up to the video like this as the Oz in Wizard of Oz, and they immediately had a human connection with me because they knew I took the time to think about who they were, maybe their experience, maybe to kind of take away what was otherwise perceived to be a very transactional interaction. It became very kind of whimsical but fun, and they knew immediately that I was investing in them because we were talking about a topic that I didn't know nothing about, but I wanted to show up a little differently. So does that help, Andrew, kind of set the stage a little bit? I think video for me is just a way to not replace, but I would say enhance, extend what was otherwise things we could just do in person. And I think it's here to stay, frankly.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's not, and we talk about that here at mmhmm, that it's not about mutually exclusive. It's about being able to sort of invert some of the pyramid of communication so that there's not such a steep drop off. That we're sort of leveling up conversations across the board, so that your video calls are better, which is a significant form of communication now, but also by being able to do recordings and to build sort of relationship capital in advance. Then when you actually do meet in person, it's like you don't have to go through some of the build up, the foundation building, because you've already done that on video. I think what you just said sort of speaks to that.
It happens so organically, right? It's because, just as you would do it at a happy hour meeting a colleague for the first time, there's the chit chat, the small talk kind of thing. That small talk, that chit chat, or otherwise kind of, the getting to know someone can happen instantaneously by doing something as simple as this, where it levels the playing field immediately. And I would even go so far as to say, whether we're using technology like yours or otherwise, this idea that when we now show up in person, we're already well beyond that. And we have conversations like, I thought you were a whole lot taller than you were on video, or actually tell me more about that thing in your background because it's been there for a year. I've just never known more about it. We now have things to talk about that's not awkward at all.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to pull up this slide. Um, yeah, I want to pull up this slide because I also like that you're bringing a sense of humor and you're bringing a sense of creativity and play. And I think oftentimes we think that the workplace and that our relationships with our colleagues, that a sense of play or bringing a sense of humor is something marginal or maybe something like additional, but it's not foundational, right? And I think there's something that we believe in as a company is that work can be fun and that we can bring that the distributed work opportunity ahead of us is a foundation, is an opportunity to rethink some of our old preconceived ideas about the workplace. And certainly with video, we have some new creative tools in our tool set to bring humor and fun into our work environments. Does that sound right to you?
It's spot on, Andrew. And I would say, no matter whether you're working for a massive firm or a small startup, what I couldn't impress upon leaders enough outside of this video is that we're culture creating, and we're kind of culture instigators. I use that word a lot here today, but this idea of having fun at work, who wants to go to a place and to work for a place that's not fun, or they don't get up in the morning and are excited to go work for, or frankly with, right? It's these kinds of things that only serve to make it more fun and kind of more just kind of enjoyable place to work. Because if we're all working so hard, we know burnout's a thing, and it's always been a thing, especially now in the day and age we live in. These kinds of things only serve to make it more enjoyable to come to work and see colleagues in a different way. And I've truly embraced that over the past now, almost 2 years now.
Yeah, totally. Well, one final question. Any advice or guidance you have for people who are inspired to go further into sort of how they show up on video and bring a video presence to their work?
Yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity to share that. I think, I would say, obviously, me being here with you today, I'm definitely a believer of, and obviously, I would say, grand experimenter of mmhmm. It's definitely one of the tools in my tool belt. If there's anything I share with anybody here, it's this idea of experimentation. We're all trying to figure this out together. And so this idea of experimentation is critical, whether that be a home office setup, whether that be the tools you're using. That's absolutely imperative, which comes in part and parcel with this adaptation. It's not going to be perfect the first time. We have this perception. I think there's been a shift in thinking that we have to be perfectly on video. Here we are, like I'm not perfectly framed in the picture and I have some green screen behind me. It's okay because everyone's figuring it out for the first time. So experiment. Don't strive for perfection. Just be good enough because, frankly, by putting yourself out there and doing something different, you're going to pique curiosity of others. And frankly, hopefully have more opportunities like this where maybe you can even inform the direction of a product or frankly, inform kind of what the next big thing is when it comes to being on video. So in light of that too, and the thing I'll say is just be yourself. We always want to kind of show up in a way that, we feel like it is perfection. Just be yourself. You be you. That's what I love about, not just mmhmm, but also those who are embracing this kind of technology. They're showing up as themselves, and that authenticity shines through when you can be creative, experiment, and adapt at the same time, Andrew. So I hope that helps kind of set some context for your audience here.
Definitely, definitely. Well, Larry, I think that we're out of time. This has been awesome. Thanks for being a master of and for sharing so much knowledge with us as a company and with the community. And just really appreciate um, uh, all this time you've given.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It's sincerely I'm humbled to be opportunity today, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks, Larry.
Awesome.
See you
You're welcome.
soon.
Thank you.